I remember when you got in touch with us, so thanks to your dad.
Go Tom.
So next I'd like to introduce Bill Primomo, who also had a cervical tumor, but many years ago might be the longest term survivor that I'm aware of. So I won't say any more about your story since you're going to share it. So welcome, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give you one.
Yeah, I just want to say something first. I got to follow an Emmy award-winning TV journalist who's much better looking than me. Thanks a lot. But everyone's ready? Who remembers this 1980 song by Larry Graham? Well, that's the incidence of a chordoma, 1 in a million. And only 5% of those, according to my research, present in teenagers. So my case, I guess, was very rare. I was trying to do the math, but I gave up. So it's been 55 years since my diagnosis, surgery, radiation therapy treatment. But until today, I never met anybody in person that had the same thing as me, and already a bunch of you guys. So back in the summer of '69, another great song by Brian Williams. I started having neck discomfort and stiffness, and the pain increased quite a bit after I got into a scrap protecting my little brother. So my mother took me to the pediatrician, and he prescribed muscle relaxants, because when you first go to a doctor with spinal pain as a kid, they don't think chordoma, right? So I also learned over the years that a lot of doctors never even heard of a chordoma because they weren't there in medical school that day when they talked about it, unless they specialized in it. So, of course, the medication didn't help. He prescribed like muscle relaxants. And they sent me to an orthopedic surgeon who took x-rays. Now, there was no CT scans or MRIs in 1969. They didn't come around until like 72 or something like that. So they saw changes in my vertebrae, and I was admitted to a hospital in Albany, New York, where we live, for further testing. So I had a myelogram and an angiogram, which are not the most pleasant of tests. But the day after the test, the neurosurgeon, Dr. Skilp, came in to see me in the hospital, and he noticed during the exam that my right deltoid muscle was quite atrophied, even though I was very active in sports, and I lost the reflex to my bicep muscle. When they hit with the hammer, it was gone. So he told me, that was the beginning of my medical vocabulary, bicep, deltoid muscle, bicep tendon. He told me I had a tumor in my cervical spine and he'd be operating that Monday to remove it. And I was 14 years old. He told this to me before my parents could even tell me. So it was all business. I told him Monday wasn't good for me because we had a trip planned to Florida for the Christmas break with my parents and my other 3 siblings. So I felt a little guilty about ruining their trip to Florida. The surgeon told my parents, he didn't tell me that I may lose the use of my right arm because of the proximity of the tumor. It was near the brachial plexus that controls your movement in your arm. So I had the surgery. They fused 3 of my cervical vertebrae, but I woke up, I could move my arm. So I go, well, of course I can move my arm, but I didn't know about, I might not be able to move my arm. Healing was slow. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. The pathology report came back with a diagnosis of chordoma. The path slides were sent to Sloan Kettering in New York for confirmation because it was, Albany in New York probably never saw anybody with chordoma before. Maybe, they didn't know what it was. A few days after I was discharged from the hospital, the surgeon called my parents and said I should go down to Sloan Kettering for a consult because they had for radiation because they had a newer type proton machine that they could give more radiation and spare the spinal cord nerves, the delicate nerves. So it was determined. I went down there. It was determined I would have 30 treatments over a 6-week period. So I wasn't happy because I already missed 3 weeks of school, and there was going to be a lot more school to miss. So Sloan Kettering had temporary housing for patients and families, and we had a small studio apartment. I think I slept on a couch. My mother had a bed, and we go down a 3-hour drive from Albany. We take a bus down every Monday morning. I'd get my treatment Monday morning, stay till Friday morning, get my last treatment, come back on the bus. So we did that whole during the treatment. So I missed 50 days of school my freshman year. And the year before, I had perfect attendance. I even got a certificate. I didn't miss one day. So on Friday afternoons, we'd come back. I'd go to the school, get my assignments for the week with my teachers, maybe some tutoring. And my sister, who was a junior in high school, was a great help with my father. And then with math, she helped me with my math, and she helped out my younger brother and my 4-year-old sister. She also was a cheerleader and president of the student council. I don't know where she found the time. But being in New York City wasn't all bad as a kid, you know. We went to Radio City Music Hall, Central Park. We saw a live taping of Jeopardy with Art Fleming as the host. That goes way back. And even though I watched it 2 weeks later live on TV, they're all taped. I still didn't know the answers to the questions. We went to a Nick game, a Ringling Brothers Circus, and then a new movie came out. I conned my mother into taking this new movie about motorcycles called Easy Rider. And I remember during some of the scenes, my mother said, "Oh my God!" Because if you've seen the movie, there's a lot of different scenes in it. Other family members would visit us on school breaks, and we would tour the city. The radiation treatments only took a few minutes, and they were pretty painless. I had the same technician every day. She was very pleasant and patient. I had a mask over my face, not like just a mask. I don't know if I could take that, but I was face down. But I was marked with a purple marker. Like almost every patient at Sloan would walk around with a purple tattoo, so you know who they are. I developed a really painful sore throat. I lost about 20 pounds, and I had the pale look of a cancer patient undergoing treatment. After the treatments were completed, I went back to school, and I was able to pass all my exams. Well, there was one teacher who wanted me to stay back. I said, "I'm not doing it. I'm taking the test. Just give me the test." I'm going to take the test. So spring came, baseball season began. I went to the first, because I was very active in sports. I went to the first practice. I tried to play, but I just couldn't. I was too stiff and too sore. But the manager of the team, he let me coach third base, which is a big deal if anybody knows baseball, because usually that's reserved for parents, one of the fathers to coach third base. But he let me coach third base, and it was good. A few years later, I was able to play ball again in 18 to 50 league, so I was able to play again. I graduated high school, attended pharmacy school, graduated, and then I went to dental school. I got married, had 2 kids, bought a home. Life was good. My daughter Kara's sitting over there. I say, well, I'm not going to, I'll say it later. I was followed up by Sloan Kettering for several years, and eventually I started seeing Dr. Skilp again, my neurosurgeon. And in 1985, during a follow-up appointment, he ordered a CT scan instead of x-rays. So I received a call from him on Friday night after I had the CT scan. He said I had a well-defined mass in my right, I forget the anatomy of that, but the carotid area. And I would need an excisional biopsy. Now, when you get a call from your doctor on a Friday night, it's usually not good news. But, I was worried about it. I thought it might be something really bad, but he said it was well-defined. And when I went into the operating room, he was there with the ENT that took it out. And I looked up, and I probably had a little verse going, and I said, "Hey, Doc, deja vu." And he actually chuckled. And this guy was all business, so for him to chuckle was something. So the diagnosis came. I knew at the time I was very involved with the hospital, being a dentist there and stuff. So I knew the diagnosis of what I had before the surgeons came on rounds. It was a neurofibroma, benign neurofibroma, but it was about as big as a walnut on one of the nerves in the sympathetic chain. So as a result of the surgery, my right eye drips a little bit, and my right pupil's constricted. I don't sweat on that side of my face, which is not a bad side effect, I guess. But they call it Horner syndrome. So whenever I go to a doctor, there's a medical student there. I go, "What's what Horner syndrome is?" And so I give them a little education. I would have regular imaging after that surgery, and 2 years later I had nodules in half my thyroid gland, and I had that removed. 10 years later, I was going to my doctor, and my calcium levels went very, very high, and that's usually a sign you have something in your parathyroid glands. And it was a benign parathyroid adenoma, which is a pretty simple surgery. They took it out because you have like 5 or 6 other glands. It was removed by a really skilled surgeon. He was actually a patient of mine in my dental practice. My internist was pretty sharp. I used to nickname him WebMD. This is like even 15 years ago when the web started getting bigger with medical stuff. And he was always on his laptop when he was doing his exams on me, looking stuff up. So he said, you know, I think we should order a carotid ultrasound on you because I read that some people with radiation get fibrous tissue in their carotid glands. So sure enough, I had blockage, a lot more than I should have had for my cholesterol level and stuff. So I was followed very close with that for 5 years, and eventually I had an angiogram, and it was time to go in there and clean that carotid out with a carotid endarterectomy. And that was 50 years after my original diagnosis. So it's very important to have follow-up treatment if you had radiation, because I mean, I know a lot of, in my dental practice, I didn't have a lot of them, but I had several patients with, you know, with cancer of the throat and whatever, and they all had radiation, and they didn't know about the carotid arteries being blocked. So it's important to mention that to your doctors. So although annoying bumps in the road of life, all these setbacks are manageable. Of course, the carotid artery, that was a big bump, you know, doing that surgery. My perpetual stiff necks and limited motion resulted in surgery. That's probably the worst thing I had to deal with. I learned to compensate. You know, I could do almost everything. Just can't. Anybody coming? When I'm in the car, I agree on my wife or whoever the passenger. So I think it's like Jeff said, it's important to be your own health advocate during your treatment, especially if you're going out of town. I say keep your tests with you. Keep everything on your phone or your computer. And when you're there, if you need a follow-up appointment, make it when you're there. Because when you go, you know what happens when you go to call a place sometimes, you know. Oh yeah, we'll get back to you next week. So make the appointments when you're there. That's a big thing. That's what I tell my dental patients too. Make your appointment now when you're here. So I have a more detailed version if you really want to be bored, some more stuff about me growing up. And I have one copy here, but if you give me, I'll leave my email somewhere. I'll leave it. And you can email me, I'll just send it to you. Okay, you can read it. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.